Hey everyone, and welcome to this Protect 30A Community Explainer. I'm Mark.
And I'm Sarah. Today, we are diving deep into District 8. We're talking about the western gateway of South Walton, which means Sandestin, Miramar Beach, and Seascape.
Look, if you live here, work here, or even just visit, you know exactly how urgent the situation is right now. We're going to break down the hard facts behind the area's two absolute biggest fights.
Right. We're talking about the single congested highway completely choking the district and that controversial 24-story condo approval that literally everyone is talking about.
We're keeping it punchy, we're keeping it grounded in the facts, strictly nonpartisan, and focused entirely on the numbers and the rules shaping our community. Let's get into it. 1 hour and 29 minutes to cover 12 miles. Absolute slow-moving nightmare. That is a direct quote from a real commuter on US Highway 98 during the summer peak. It's just absolute madness. Another driver reported taking 1 hour and 40 minutes just to get from Fort Walton Beach to Grand Boulevard. If you have been stuck in that gridlock, you know this shared pain is totally valid. It's not an exaggeration at all. It is the daily reality of our infrastructure being pushed to the absolute brink. Okay, Section 1, the Gateway's Gridlock Crisis, covering Sandestin, Miramar Beach, and Seascape. So why is this specific stretch feeling the squeeze so intensely? Well, District 8 is essentially the front door to South Walton. Driving east, this is where all the visitors first hit the 30A corridor. You've got the massive Sandestin Resort, Miramar Beach, Seascape, plus major commercial engines like Grand Boulevard and Silver Sands.
Yeah, more tourist traffic, more retail, and more rooftops funnel right through this exact gateway than almost anywhere else in the county. And the rhythm of this gridlock is incredibly unique. We don't just have a standard commuter rush hour here. Residents deal with two distinct daily surges. There's a 2 p.m. rush when everyone leaves the beach, and a 5 p.m. rush when locals are just trying to get home from work.
And the real wild card? The rainy day rush hour. Because the second it rains and the tourists abandon the sand, the highway immediately turns into an all-day nightmare. Our traffic patterns are dictated just as much by the clouds in the sky as by standard commuting. Which brings us to Section 2, the US Highway 98 choke point. Everything we just talked about funnels into one physical reality, US Highway 98. It is the single continuous east-west artery for the entire area. Honestly, almost every other issue we're talking about today ultimately routes back to this one highway. When 98 backs up, the entire district backs up with it. So Mark, what is the state actually doing right now about this 19.4-mile stretch?
Right now, they are running a PD&E study. That stands for Project Development and Environment Study. In plain English, it's a federally required long-term step where the Florida Department of Transportation evaluates a project's design and environmental effects before anything can actually be built. It is the absolutely critical first hurdle for widening the corridor from 4 to 6 lanes, all the way from County Road 30A down to the Phillips Inlet Bridge.
Now, in July 2024, the state did finish widening a small 1.8-mile stretch near Mac Bayou Road. But for the rest of the 19.4 miles, while the state has allocated about $16.5 million for preliminary engineering in fiscal year 2026, but the actual right-of-way and construction, completely unfunded. If everything goes perfectly, and I mean perfectly, construction is roughly 8 to 10 years out. That massive, frustrating gap between the excruciating gridlock you feel today and the relief a decade away is exactly why the community is so fired up. And it's not just the massive state projects that are stalling out. 82 spaces. That is the number of spaces planned for a modest, local municipal parking lot at 76 Driftwood Road in Miramar Beach. It was supposed to include ADA stalls, golf cart parking, an air-conditioned transit stop, and restrooms. But right now, it is entirely on hold pending a stormwater redesign with absolutely no firm completion date. It's mind-boggling, really. Even the tiny fixes designed to get just a few cars off the road are getting completely bogged down in red tape. Moving on to Section 3, the Echelon Tower collision. Okay, let's pivot from the physical road to the legal flashpoint that perfectly captures this area's growth crisis, the Echelon Tower. This proposed 24-story, roughly 246-unit condo over at 100 Seascape Drive has become the symbolic center of the entire growth debate in South Walton. It really forces us to ask, what happens when decades-old development rights meet a community that says its roads simply cannot take any more cars? To understand how this tower got greenlit, we have to look at the BCC, the Board of County Commissioners. This is the body of 5 elected decision-makers for Walton County. They have the final say on these major development orders. And on March 24, 2026, the Echelon Tower came before them for a final, incredibly controversial vote. Now, the county's own planning commission, which is an advisory board, had actually recommended denying the tower, specifically citing traffic and quality of life impacts. But the BCC overrode that recommendation in a narrow 3-2 vote. Commissioners Brad Drake, Danny Glidewell, and Tony Anderson voted in favor of Echelon. And Commissioners Dan Curry and Donna Johns voted against it, with Commissioner Johns publicly stating she believed the condo would destroy the citizens' quality of life. So the crucial point is, how exactly does a 24-story building get approved today when current rules limit building heights to just 50 feet?
2 words: grandfathered status. The developer's order traced back to an original legally vested approval from 2008 or even earlier. Because that legal approval predated the newer, stricter 50-foot height restrictions, the developer had the legal right to bypass the current limits.
This isn't a simple story of heroes versus villains. It is a profound structural clash. On one side, you have a property owner with long-standing, legally vested rights they acquired way back in 2008. And on the exact opposite side, you have an advisory planning board and a deeply concerned community pointing out that present-day capacity, specifically US 98, just cannot absorb the traffic of a 24-story tower. So you've got grandfathered legal status on one side and intense community realities on the other. All right, Section 4, resorts, housing, and workers. Let's broaden the lens a bit here. The traffic and density debates don't just affect the skyline, they directly impact the very people who keep the district running. We need to look at how the ongoing resort expansions and the critical shortage of workforce housing are colliding in this bottlenecked geography.
When we talk about resorts here, you'll often hear the terms DRI and PUD. That's Development of Regional Impact and Planned Unit Development. Don't let the acronyms bore you. These are simply master plan frameworks for massive projects whose effects cross local boundaries. When a developer gets a DRI, it comes with binding commitments, like maintaining specific amounts of open green space. And those commitments are exactly what are being actively fought over right now.
Because the pace of development here is absolutely relentless. Seascape as a whole carries approval for up to 2,500 units, including the active $50 million Grove at Seascape project. And Sandestin is constantly expanding amenities, recently dropping $500,000 on new pickleball courts. But importantly, the Sandestin DRI open space compliance is actively being litigated. Just in February 2025, a state appellate court found the community out of compliance with its open space requirements after lawsuits challenged new high-density construction. So even inside master-planned resorts, the battle over density versus green space is literally playing out in the courts. There is a massive, quiet crisis happening right alongside this. The workers who staff these expanding resorts, the restaurants and the shops, largely cannot afford to live near them.
Now, what's really interesting about these numbers is the sheer scale. The median home price in Sandestin is almost $600,000. Miramar Beach is over $626,000.
And the 30A countywide average is a staggering $1.62 million. With only about 22% of county land actually being buildable, the intense housing pressure is quite literally forcing out the essential service workforce that keeps the entire district's economy functioning. Finally, Section 5, where your voice counts. So we have a single choked highway, controversial grandfathered high-rises, endless resort expansion, and a workforce getting priced out. What comes next? Here are the specific, actionable civic items on the horizon. First, the county attorney already warned that appellate litigation over the Echelon Tower is expected. That legal fight is likely not over. Second, the state's long-range US 98 PD&E study requires public input. You can actively track it and speak up about the design. Third, keep your eyes on that delayed Driftwood redesign and demand timelines for these stalled local mobility projects. And finally, the absolute biggest one, the plan for Walton 2040. The county's comprehensive plan is going through a massive update right now, deciding everything from transit corridors to density limits. Which brings us to our final point to ponder. As the 2040 Comprehensive Plan updates are being written, how will you use your voice to balance legacy growth with local livability?
The decisions made in these next few months are going to dictate what District 8 looks like for the next decade. Your voice still matters immensely when it comes to density and infrastructure.
For Protect 30A, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Mark.
Stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you on the next Explainer.